The long-awaited mobile release for Pokemon Champions brought with it a new update, including 16 new Mega Evolutions, new items, and various returning Pokemon. And the reception to this new update has been a bit lukewarm. Despite so many new options for Mega Evolutions, some of which are quite powerful, a lot of high-level tournament play is still seeing team structures that look very similar to what was already being used, with the top Megas of Charizard Y and Floette still absolutely dominating. And the impact of this new content on the metagame is not as significant as many hoped. There weren't actually that many new non-Mega Pokemon added, and many of the ones added have had little impact as well. And as for the new items added, only a couple have really had an impact. The most noteworthy returning Pokemon is probably Gholdengo. Gholdengo has already had good tournament success and high usage, and has also had the clearest metagame impact so far. However, it's interesting because Gholdengo has actually been significantly nerfed in Pokemon Champions. Some say that Gholdengo deserved it, and Gholdengo has had a silver spoon in his mouth for too long. Me personally, I think that they just hate to see a golden individual like this succeed, and they want to bring him down a peg so that they feel better about themselves, but, you know, people are entitled to their own opinion. The move Make It Rain has been nerfed to now be 95 accuracy, down from 100, and also it lowers special attack by 2 stages instead of the prior 1 stage. This is a significant difference, and the move is far less spammable now. It is now equivalent to other special attack drop effects like Draco Meteor and Overheat. Some say that in the first place it was a bit odd that Gholdengo got to only lose 1 special attack, while hard-working Pokemon like Dragapult and Houndoom and people like that have to lose 2 special attack, but now Gholdengo has been brought down to their level and loses 2 special attack also. It's a significant difference. Now, after using Make It Rain, you've kind of weakened yourself so much that you probably have to switch out to reset your stats. But even still, even in this nerfed state, Make It Rain is still an amazing move. It hits both opponents with a 120 base power, and the other stat drop moves that are similar or equivalent to Make It Rain do not do that. And of course, a minor nerf like this would not keep Gholdengo down that much. It is still a fundamentally excellent Pokemon with an amazing Steel Ghost typing, and the ability Good as Gold, which grants an immunity to all status moves. I believe Gholdengo also does not have Thunder Wave anymore, is that correct? That is correct, I have verified this through rigorous research. Gholdengo no longer has Thunder Wave, which is another pretty significant nerf. That was one of its important options, but still, of course, a powerful Pokemon. And one that feels appreciated here as an option against Mega Floette. We have a new option for a Steel type that can threaten Mega Floette and defensively answer it. Mega Floette tends to rely exclusively on Fairy type attacks, which means that you resist everything it does and strike it with pretty significant super effective damage that also hits the opponent. The other opponent, I should say. Nasty Plot can also allow you to outpace their Calm Mind. You gain more special attack than they gain special defense. Good as Gold also really comes in handy here. I feel like there's a rise in Encore in Pokemon Champions. A lot of stuff runs Encore as a miscellaneous utility option. Gholdengo being able to click Protect and Nasty Plot without worrying about the Encore punish is pretty significant. Gholdengo is also very much appreciated in a Sneasler-centric metagame, because Gholdengo destroys Sneasler. It is immune to both Poison and Fighting, the 2 stab types of Sneasler, and it's immune to Fake Out. I think Gholdengo is a fine new addition to the format. There's plenty that threatens it, there's plenty it answers. Feels like a balanced and well-rounded new Pokemon to add to the game, that is in many ways appreciated for what it does add. And many will malign Gholdengo and say that he is only successful because of nepotism, and yet they nerfed his Make It Rain and see how he still thrives? You see how he's still thriving? Even though they tried to take him down a peg, it's because this is an honest and hard-working Pokemon, and you are trying to deny that, and it's disgusting. It's disgusting that you won't let Gholdengo have his flowers. I mean, what's wrong with you? Annihilape is also back, and Annihilape has been annihilated. They've severely nerfed this guy to the point where it's actually not even that commonly used, which is crazy. Annihilape was a very strong Pokemon in Gen 9, of course, but in these tournaments, if Annihilape is getting used, it's not really making good runs or being very impressive, which is a bit surprising. Annihilape has lost the key option of Final Gambit, which it used to trade with enemies. Final Gambit is a cool move that will sacrifice the Pokemon that uses it, but then deal damage equal to their current HP to the target. Nice way to trade in certain scenarios, and a good option for Annihilape that it no longer has. But more notably is the fact that Rage Fist has now been nerfed beyond repair. Rage Fist, back in Gen 9, one of the strongest moves the franchise has ever seen. A 50 power ghost type attack that would ramp by 50 base power every single time Annihilape got hit. And what was great about this in Gen 9 was that this base power increase did not reset on switch out. It kept this base power increase, and this increase could ramp up to 300 base power, which is just a ludicrous amount. Now, however, Rage Fist does actually reset back to 50 base power on switch out, which is a pretty severe nerf. That was the whole reason the move was good in the first place, was because you kept the base power increase. Now it is far worse. It might still be worth running. I mean, while you're in, they don't want to hit you and you can ramp up the power of the Rage Fist, but it is certainly not the incredible move it was back in Generation 9. Now, I know I've spoken about how Rage Fist was a bit of an overtuned move in Gen 9 in past videos, but now I sort of feel bad. Because without Rage Fist, it feels like Annihilape is a shell of its former self. He died and became a ghost, and now he died another death. A more terrible death, which is that he may be forgotten. I don't think Annihilape is fantastic in the meta either. It's kind of bad versus both of the top megas, Zardwai and Floette. It of course just dies to Floette. But Zardwai is faster. Annihilape has base 90 speed, which is just below that ever-crucial 100 threshold. And Charizard Y surely has enough damage to overwhelm Annihilape. And Mega Metagross is newly added to the game. In many people's eyes, the top new Mega added in Regulation MB. And this has Psychic Fangs that it commonly uses as Stab, which is very good for hitting Sneasler, also very good for hitting Annihilape. And Mega Metagross is also faster than you. Maybe these metagame conditions are more of the reason that Annihilape is having a pretty poor time right now, though these severe nerfs do not help either. Grimmsnarl has actually felt like a more impactful addition than Annihilape, which is a little bit surprising, but in some ways it isn't, because Grimmsnarl has been a good doubles Pokemon in the past too. Grimmsnarl is feeling like a pretty powerful prankster support Pokemon, and an alternative to Sableye and Whimsicott. Prankster is of course an amazing ability that grants +1 priority to status moves. Grimmsnarl very good at setting Light Screen and Reflect. And one of its best options is the priority boosted parting shot, so it can pivot out while weakening an enemy. Very good move. And what's also cool now is that you can use this against your own Mega Staraptor if you're running one to buff it, because Mega Staraptor has contrary. Instead of losing attack and special attack from parting shot, they will gain attack and special attack. Also means you can pivot more reliably since you're not worried about a Dark type or a Gholdengo shutting down the parting shot from taking effect. The addition of Grimmsnarl is certainly felt immediately. I almost think this might be a bad thing, because we were seeing some interesting prankster support Pokemon in this metagame, like Sableye and Meowstic prop up. Now Grimmsnarl might just replace many of them, but I don't know, Sableye might still have its place with its access to Fake Out and Encore, which Grimmsnarl does not have. Meowstic also has Fake Out, and it can be a Psychic Terrain setter. Grimmsnarl, let me not be an idiot and check if it gets Encore. No, it doesn't. It gets Taunt, but not Encore. Does not get Rain Dance either, which is noteworthy. Meowstic and Sableye can be Rain Dance utilizers, but I just think that the momentum offered by Parting Shot will probably mean Grimmsnarl is going to be the superior choice, plus its stats are a bit better. It actually has a good attack stat, and Spirit Break for Fairy Stab is not irrelevant. This is a genuine good option in Grimmsnarl's toolkit. So Gholdengo and Grimmsnarl are the two most impactful new Pokemon additions to Regulation MB. Beyond that though, there really is not much that feels that relevant. They added Mashana to the game, and I don't know about you, but I was absolutely clamoring for Mashana to be in Pokemon Champions. I was very furious that it was not in the initial release, and I have finally been satiated. Thank you. However, it seems for some reason that Mashana is having little metagame impact. I wonder why that could be. Perhaps because it's not any good and it doesn't do anything. Oh, what? They've added Quillfish and Overquill. Overquill may seem okay, but there's no real place for it on a rain team. There isn't really. Have they even added anything of note? I suppose base form Scolipede could be something if I want to kid myself. I believe I also saw that Wolf was using Vileplume as an alternative to Venusaur, which would seem absurd because they are both grass poison types with chlorophyll, but Venusaur seems strictly better. But Vileplume has access to the move After You, which is a decent support move that causes the target to make it move right after you, as the name suggests, so you can use it on your ally if they're slow to make them go faster because you have the chlorophyll boost in the sun. This is one extra thing that Vileplume has over Venusaur. I feel like the 50 base speed is still going to be a problem, but props to Wolf for trying to find something fun in this metagame where they gave us about a handful of new toys to play with. Good on you for thinking of something. I've already done a ranking of all the new Megas, but to give a quick rundown, most of the new Megas are pretty bad, especially some of the lower end ones like Malamar, who is sort of a bit of a cosmic joke of a Pokemon that exists for us to point and laugh at. They say he's got brains, but they aren't doing him any good. I wish they would. For all that mental capacity, all you could think up was to get a bit more stats and have the same ability of Contrary and be completely outclassed by Mega Staraptor, Mega Malamar. I mean, what are you? What is with you? Most of these new Megas having little impact. Mega Swampert, who is a guy that already existed in the past, is one of the best ones because it fits very well on Rain, which was already good. So they've basically buffed Rain significantly, which many think was not necessary. The most noteworthy new Megas from ZA that are newly introduced to champions are probably Staraptor and Mega Raichu Y. Mega Staraptor has Contrary, which is a very good ability, and that has seen some genuine play, and so has Mega Raichu Y with the incredible No-Guard Zap Cannon combination. But the most successful new Megas really are just returning ones like Swampert, Mawile, and Metagross. It does feel a little bit disappointing that so many of these new exciting Megas are just paling in comparison to old ones that we already know were good in the past. Despite Mega Falinks having very little in the way of redeeming qualities or desirable competitive traits, many view Mega Falinks as sort of a underdog hero, akin to the great Odysseus, who against the wrath of gods and the misfortune that he is struck by at every turn seems to power through with sheer ingenuity and force of will and courage. I mean, look at the way that the Phalanxes form into a sword and shield and a robot body. Look at that and tell me that Mega Falinks cannot make something happen. I'm sure that as the metagame progresses, Mega Falinks will prove to be invaluable. We just don't know it yet. We just can't see it yet. Could a Mega Falinks come up with a plan as ingenious as the Trojan horse? Wait a minute. They gave it higher horsepower. Wait a second. There might be something going on here that we could scarcely understand yet. I didn't really touch on this in my other Mega ranking, but it's actually a little bit lame that they just gave it Defiant when they put so much effort into its visual appearance. And it would seem to be doing something more than just what it was in its base state, you know? In its base state, it's a defiant being, but I guess you could say that he's defying the odds in turning into a robot with a sword and shield, but I think he's doing more than that. I think he could have had a different ability that's a bit better. It's a fine ability, but he could have done better than this. You could have given him something else. To create robot sword and shield Phalanx and then just give it Defiant, I just don't know if I respect that artistically when you gave Electros its own custom ability called Elevate, when really I would say Phalanx is the one elevating its very being. And we can see that before our eyes. What has Electric ever done for me? Damn him. Electros, sorry. Forgive me for getting sidetracked on the Mega Phalanx situation. We must now talk about items. There are some pretty significant new item additions. One of the most significant is the Light Clay, which is an item that extends the duration of screen effects like Aurora Veil, Light Screen, and Reflect to 8 turns instead of 5. And this is significant, even though in doubles games go quicker. Games will usually go for more than 5 turns, and the extra turns do make a difference on Reflect and Light Screen. It's part of the reason that Grimmsnarl has also been good, because it has access to its ever-valuable Light Clay, which conveniently works well with item claws as well, since nothing else really wants to run Light Clay and you don't have to waste a good item on the Grimmsnarl. Alolan Ninetales can also use Light Clay for the Aurora Veil effect. For that to hit 8 turns, Sableye, I'm sure, could use Light Clay. I don't know if I'm too fond of this. I think that this will serve to make some things better that I don't like playing against, like for example Archaludon. Because when you set Light Screen, Archaludon becomes much more difficult to handle since it is weaker on the special side, but with the Light Screen that is no longer an issue and it can much more easily ramp up its defense with Stamina. Special Bulk is covered by the Light Screen and it becomes a little bit unkillable. Reflect and Light Screen also serve to really enhance Mega Villain, who is a Pokemon that I think really lives up to its name as the villain of my story. A Pokemon that never should have been made, and that when you touch him you get burned. So the presence of a Light Clay indirectly buffing Mega Villain is a little bit of a shame in my world. But even more noteworthy than the addition of Light Clay is the addition of Life Orb, which was a noteworthy item not included on the initial release. People were using offensive items like the type items, you know, Charcoal, Magnet, those sorts of items that just buff attacks of a certain type. The lack of Life Orb was felt greatly, and now it's back, and I think the chief abuser of it has been Garchomp. I think it's a pretty clean item choice for a Garchomp. Garchomp doesn't really need any other item in particular. It was using stuff like Yachi Berry, maybe Focus Sash, if you're not using it elsewhere, Summer Choice Scarf, but Life Orb is a perfect fit to just straightforwardly enhance Garchomp's damage, and it gets so much out of that with its high attack and great spread moves and stab moves. And of course, any offensive Pokemon can use it. I've seen some Basculasians use it. I've seen a base form Kangaskhan use it as well, which I think is actually a good idea. Base form Kangaskhan with Life Orb for the scrappy fake out and such. But by far the most prominent one has been Garchomp. Now I think a lot of people are not talking about how this will impact Watchog and Watchog fans, because what you don't understand is that Life Orb is a 1.3x damage boost to Watchog Blast, which is his signature move. And this move has a 150 base power, which is high to begin with, boosted further by Analytic, but then on top of that we're going to have the Life Orb boost for further damage output. And I think that people are not realizing just how impactful this will be. I think that this will significantly enhance the pace at which I achieve the Watchog Professor achievement, which requires me to win 100 battles with Watchog, so I am very thankful for the addition of the Life Orb. I think that this is going to have a demonstrable impact on my life. But beyond the Life Orb and the Light Clay, not much else is that impactful. We have the Weather Rocks in the game, which are something. These will enhance the duration of specific weather effects from 5 turns to 8 turns. I don't know if these ones will be as valuable. I do feel like weather setters would prefer to run more aggressive items, or like a berry or something with more short-term value, since games go shorter in doubles, and I don't think the same logic applies that makes Light Clay good, because weather can be more easily overwritten, which would diminish the impact of the rock. The real concern is just getting the weather active and winning the weather war, which is not something where the turn count of how long the weather lasts really matters. That makes sense. The Expert Belt is another good offensive item option that just enhances the damage of super effective moves by 20%, an alternative to the Life Orb, perhaps. Good on Pokemon with wide coverage options that does not come with a recoil effect attached. Can be a good item in the right scenario. They added the Big Root into the game. Do you think the Big Root will see some use? The Big Root grants a bonus to HP absorbing moves. I'm not so sure the Big Root will have an impact, personally. They've also added, the Muscle Band, which grants plus 10% to physical attacks. The Metronome is an interesting one. Boost the power of moves used repeatedly by 20% for each, but this will reset if the enemy uses Protect, which I think makes it completely garbage in doubles, where Protect is used constantly. I suppose I shouldn't complain that they're adding these bad items. I mean, it's better than not adding them. It's better than nothing. The Wide Lens could be good news for Mousehold, perhaps, to get increased accuracy on Population Bomb. Maybe you could afford to run that. The Shed Shell. If you really stink against Mega Gengar, you can chuck a Shed Shell on to not be trapped by Shadow Tag. Seems like a hefty use of the item slot, but it could be something. And we also have Iron Ball, which is a trickable item. Iron Ball has a negative effect. It will halve your speed stat and ground you meaning that if you're a flying type or you're levitating, you are no longer immune to ground if you're holding the Iron Ball. And you can use the move Trick to give this item to an enemy to deliberately disadvantage them. Especially good if they are levitating. So that's cool. Maybe that will see some use. Who knows? So I think overall I would agree with the sentiment that this new content has not tremendously impacted the metagame. There are a couple of noteworthy Pokemon, noteworthy Megas and noteworthy items, but beyond that, not much really. And I know it's still early on, and there is much to explore with these new tools, and it does make sense that initially in the first tournaments they run for a new format, that established teams would perform better, as people know how to use those teams, and they have results and stuff, and inertia behind them, whereas any new strategy will have the issue of being untested and less developed. So I definitely think it will take time to figure out how to best use these new Megas, especially the more promising ones like Mega Staraptor and Mega Raichu Y, which were unfortunately kind of destroyed in results recently by more established Megas. But it's possible that we just haven't found the right teams to abuse these guys yet, and there's more development to be had there. That said, though, it does feel like the amount of things that could possibly impact the metagame are pretty slim, and much of the stuff added here is just kind of irrelevant. And maybe you could argue that a big metagame overhaul right now would not be a smart idea. With the new mobile release, a lot of new players are going to be coming in. It makes sense to give us some new stuff, but you don't want to completely shift the metagame to something unrecognizable. It is good that the mobile players coming into the game have some sort of established framework and a metagame that is already formed, and team structures that they know are good that they can look to for something to try out. I think that's a positive thing, perhaps. The metagame has not existed for that long. It's not like we want a full reset, necessarily. I think where some of the disappointment lies for me here is just in the design of many of the new Megas, which I'm a little bit disappointed by personally. And I don't necessarily need every Mega to be amazing competitively, but it is a shame that so many of these just got their same abilities, or some terrible ability like Mega Scolipede getting shell armor. It would be a bit much too if they all got signature abilities, but I don't know. Doesn't it feel like these Megas are kind of sourceless? Like they just don't excite me, many of them. When they had promising ideas, I think, behind them, at least in their visual designs. Mega Malamar looks kind of insane, and it just feels weird that it doesn't do anything, right? It looks like it should do something, but it doesn't do anything. I was sort of joking before about Mega Falinks, but it is kind of disappointing that it just got defiant when it looks like it has completely reinvented itself. It doesn't need to be like pure power or something ridiculous like that, but I don't know. Just having defiant again is a little lame, can I say? Isn't that a little lame? I do like Mega Staraptor and I do like Raichu Y, but that's two Megas, man. Mega Pyro is pretty good, but I do feel like Mega Pyro is a weird one to focus on. I don't really like its visual. I wish they gave a cool, broken ability to a different one. I guess that's just me personally, but even Mega Pyro, yes, it's viable and good, and that's kind of cool, but isn't it sort of filling the same space that other Pokemon already fill right now? Do we really need another fast, fire-type special attacker when Delphox is there and Charizard Y is already there? There's also like Hisuian Typhlosion with Eruption. I don't really think the meta needs that, or that the game needs that when other Megas are similar, and the slight variation that Mega Pyro has are not really that distinct feeling. It's not like Mega Pyro is a huge departure from Mega Delphox in what it's fundamentally doing. It has some slight variation. I said in my last video also that I gave them a bit of credit for making Elevate, which is a new ability for Mega Electros, but is this really that creative? It's just Levitate and Beast Boost thrown on. It's not actually that interesting. It's just two abilities combined. They didn't really actually design a unique thing here. They just didn't want to get rid of Levitate, and they also wanted to give it another ability, so they threw them both together. Which feels a bit random. They've only done that once before, I think, with As-1, to just like combine the effects of two abilities like that. So why does Mega Electros get such incredible priority? It gets the incredible honor of being the next Pokemon to have two abilities combined? I mean, what the... We still have quite a few Megas from ZA that are not in Champions yet. Many of them probably not in Champions yet because they're going to be really powerful, like the Z Megas and Mega Baxcalibur and fellas like that. And what I've learned from this is that you can never truly predict what they're going to do with the abilities. They'll design the coolest and most interesting visual you've ever seen and just give it the same ability it already had, and then they'll make Mega Pyroar and give it this distinct signature ability. So my current prediction is that Mega Baxcalibur, who is very cool in my opinion, who's got a sword coming out of its back, is going to just get Thermal Exchange again, and they're going to go ahead and give Mega Tatsugiri an all-new distinct ability called Funny Fish, which is actually going to have the effect of Magic Guard, granting immunity to all indirect damage, and also the effect of Swift Swim, which grants double speed in the rain. They're going to combine these two effects into one and call it Funny Fish. That's my personal prediction right now, but we can never claim to know what a Game Freak is going to do. One more thing, folks, while I'm here and while I'm getting things off my chest. In Gen 9 competitive doubles tournaments, a new rule was introduced called Open Team Sheet, which means that you have to declare a bunch of information about your team when you enter a tournament. You have to declare for each Pokemon what moves they learn and what items they are carrying, and this information is known by your opponent, and on the flip side, you know all this information about them. And this completely changed the way competitive doubles was played. In the past, at first you didn't know what moves they were carrying on their Pokemon or which Pokemon had which item. You had to learn this information as you played your opponent in the set. But now you have all this information to begin with, which totally changes your decision making. You aren't going to be surprised by anything. There is no element of scouting or trying to figure out what they have, you just know what they have, and this totally changes everything. And what was frustrating for many players back in Gen 9 was the fact that in the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet games, when you play ranked battles online, there's no way to play with that same open team sheet system. The in-game UI does not tell you all of the information about your opponent's Pokemon, so for this reason, in-game ranked battles were actually terrible practice for tournaments, and players would practice instead on Pokemon Showdown, a fan-made battle simulator, where they did introduce open team sheet to Pokemon Showdown, so you could, just like in tournaments, see all the information about your Pokemon, which of course has massive impact on how you actually play the game and how you make decisions. Pokemon Champions, notably, is a game dedicated specifically to VGC doubles, and it released without any open team sheet system in the UI. So if you want to play open team sheets with somebody, you have to play a custom game with them and just send each other your team lists manually over something like Discord. And at first I thought that this meant maybe they are doing away with the open team sheet in Pokemon Champions tournaments. At this point, there had been no Pokemon Champions tournaments, so we didn't know. This was only introduced in Gen 9, they could easily rescind that rule and have it back to the way it used to be, and maybe this is why they didn't implement any UI in Pokemon Champions or functionality to have an open team sheet system. However, as many of you know, recently the first official Pokemon Champions tournament has happened, and it was North American International Championships, and what do you know, folks? This tournament had open team sheet as a rule in the tournament. So, even though Pokemon Champions is a dedicated VGC simulator, basically, it's the platform with which you play VGC, it is still bad practice for tournaments to play ranked mode in Pokemon Champions. It is still better to play Pokemon Showdown with the Pokemon Champions format because they have the open team sheets implemented. And now I thought to myself naively, well, maybe in the mobile release update, they will add open team sheets to Pokemon Champions. But they didn't. They have not added open team sheets. And you might think I'm overreacting to this, you might think this isn't a big deal, but isn't it actually quite bizarre that the game that is a dedicated platform for competitive Pokemon specifically, for VGC doubles, basically, does not have this extremely important tournament rule implemented into the game that completely changes how the game is played? I cannot stress enough how much of a difference this makes. I mean, whether or not you know if the opponent has an item like a Choice Scarf means that you know for a fact that they will be faster than you or not, whereas in a closed team sheet system you would be guessing and trying to predict whether they would have Choice Scarf on that Pokemon or not, based on context clues or other things. Maybe you're up against a Charizard, and in an open team sheet system, you know that they're holding Charizardite X, so you know that it has to be Mega Charizard X. In a closed team sheet system, it could be two different possible Mega Charizards, which completely changes how you play. It's a massive difference. I actually think this is quite under-discussed for how important it is for the experience and for, tournament practice and just playing the same game as you do in tournaments. It's effectively like two different games now between tournament VGC and Pokemon Champions ranked battles. And this would not be a difficult feature to implement at all, in my opinion. They already have screens that show all of your team information in one convenient place when you can share teams, shows everything, held items, all of their moves, etc. It would be very easy to just have something like this existing within the in-battle UI somewhere. And I realize I'm sounding very negative right now. I overall think Pokemon Champions is a far better way to play VGC doubles than prior entries in the series, with the quality of life features of, EV training being so simple now, and moveset alterations also being very simple now, but it's just very odd for a modern competitive game to be lacking a incredibly important feature like this that is something that impacts tournament gameplay massively, that just for some reason is not present in the game that is marketed and clearly designed as a competitive hub for Pokemon. I just find that very strange. Thank you for watching, folks. Do you agree or disagree with what I had to say here? Are you thankful that they have added the Pokemon Quillfish to Pokemon Champions finally? You let me know, and thank you very much for watching as always.